Well, yesterday, during the video that we made on the beach at Coarse, I promised to actually go through in a bit more detail, and so you could see a bit easier how I make up the snoods and the rig bodies that you're going to need to fish for flatfish. I'm also going to touch on how you can then tie a swivel to the top of them at the end and store them on EVA spools so that you can reuse them again in following sessions. I'm also conscious that when I came off the beach, you always remember things you forgot to do, and I forgot to actually mention leads, the type of leads we were using yesterday and why we were using them, and how using different types of leads in different conditions can help to present the bait better and thus increase your catch rate. So we'll also touch on leads at the end of this video. So first thing though we're going to do is we're going to look at, again, making up the rig bodies, tying up the snoods, and then storing both the rig bodies and snoods for next time you go out fishing. Okay, so just before we start, we'll have a quick recap on the components that we need to make this 2-hook flapper rig. First of all, we need a bit of rig body. Okay, this is the same as we actually used yesterday. I think it's 030. So that will form the rig body. We then need a large swivel for the top, a lead clip for the bottom, 4 beads, 2 swivels, some stops and some stick stops. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to tie the swivel to the top of the rig body. So we're going to do this with a normal standard half blood knot, a big grinner knot. 3, 4. I'm going to pop it through the loop, and then what we're going to do is go back round a couple of times through the rig again. Okay, there we are. Wet the knot, and pull it tight. Okay, so that's the swivel tied to the top of the rig body. Snick it off to make it nice and neat so there's nothing to catch on. Okay, now we're going to be threading on our components. So if you remember correctly, yesterday the first thing we did was to put on a stick stop. So the first thing to do is to pop the stick stop on. Eyesight's terrible as usual. Lighting here is not particularly good, to be honest with you. Right, so that's the stick stop on. So move that up out the way a little bit. Sorry, the normal stop on, oval stop. We're then going to put a bead on, and it goes in through the thin end. These are helicopter beads, so there's a fat end and a narrow end. So we're going to go in through the thin end, up against that stop, like so. We're then going to put on the swivel, like that. Then going to put on another helicopter bead, again this time though through the fat end. If I can see the hole, difficult trying to not get in the way of the camera. Okay, and then another stop. Again, let's pop that on there. So there we've got a stop, a bead, a swivel, a bead and a stop. Okay, I'll push those up out the way a little bit as we did yesterday, and then we'll do the second one. Okay, same again now. First one, a stop, find it without grabbing the wire from the other one. Stop on the line. Okay, put it up a little bit out the way. Then we want a swivel again in through the thin end, a bead in through the thin end, a swivel, bead, but in through the thick end. Okay, and then another stop. Now the stops I'm using today are slightly tighter than the ones I used yesterday, so I actually didn't need to use the stick stop. But if you remember yesterday, because the things weren't quite stiff, we needed to put a second stop below that to stop it moving down when the fish pull it. But actually these are pretty solid, these stops. They don't need to be moved. These are new Colmic ones. Okay, so that's basically your two pieces on the line. We'll move that one up out the way, and then all we're going to do now is we're going to measure the rig body length. Okay, so I've got a little measure down here, so I'm thinking up towards the top. So the top beads is going to come up just about 3 or 4 inches below the top swivel at the top of the rig. So I'll move all that up there. So you've got swivel now, few inches, and then the top swivel for the snood. I'm going to come down, as I say, 30 to 40 centimeters, and then we'll have the second one. Okay, like so. And then what we're going to do is a few inches below that, we're going to tie on the lead clip. So that's a bit much line, don't need all that line, so get rid of that. Now the lead clips, I didn't mention yesterday, but there's a right way and wrong way. The angled part of the clip coming up the way needs to go at the top, because that's where you put your clip on and your lead goes down into the seats in the bottom. Okay, so I'll tie the lead clip onto here. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, through the little hole, through the loop at the bottom. I'm going to come back up. 1, 2 will do. Wet the knot and cinch it down. That's not going to come off. Okay, and then snick that off. Okay, and there basically is your rig body. So you've got your lead clip at the bottom. Move these back down towards the bottom now. Okay, there needs to be a little bit of a gap. I prefer a little bit of a gap to let them stand off slightly and not get wrapped around the lead. But you've got your lead clip, your bottom snood attachment, come up about 40 centimeters above it. You've got your top one, and then above that you've got your swivel. Now yesterday the rig body I used was only 30 centimeters between them. I'm making this one slightly longer because as I said yesterday, Dave caught better with a longer, fishing with a longer snood, so I'm going to do that for next time. So all we need to do now is to store that away. We're not going to put the hook lengths on it, but I'm going to tie up a hook length, and I'll show you how I keep my hook lengths all tied up. Okay, so I'm going to grab a EVA spool out of my bag, out of my box. As you can see, these Colmic ones have a space for the line diameter and the hook number if you put the hooks on. Clearly we're not going to put the hooks on, but I will write the line diameter on that, and I tend to, instead of hook number size, write in there the length of the rig I'm going to do, and underneath I write on what it is. So this will be 2 hook, 1 up, 1 down, and I'll write down exactly what the body is and the line diameter on that later on. So I always like to colour code things, so I'll get a couple of yellow pins, just normal matte pins from Asda. I always hate getting these out of the box because they tend to, I always get them stuck in me. Can never get 2 yellow ones when you want 2 yellow ones. Okay, so first of all then, all we're going to do is going to take a pin, put it through the eye. Oh, dropped it. Take a pin, put it through the eye of the swivel, and push it into the edge of the EVA spool, and then we're just going to run that round. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and all we're going to do is take, if I can find it, we'll take the other pin and pop it into the end like that, and then I'll write on that later, and that can just slot into my rig box like that, and that's another rig set away, ready to use next time I go fishing. So that's okay. So we're now going to have a quick look at tying up a snood, just to recap on what we did yesterday. Again, I'm going to use the former line, as it's dark and probably show up better on this background. So as you remember yesterday, what we're going to do is we're going to put a stop on the line to stop the beads blowing up the line and the bait blowing up the line. And one of the main reasons for this is that because we're using such light line, what can happen is if the beads do blow up the line, they can spin the line up and cause tangles. So it's good to have a stop, and it also helps you to control the bait, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So what we're going to do today though is we're going to put a nice little sequin on. If I can get it on. Oh, look at that, first time as a result. So there's a bead, the stop, a sequin. We're then going to put the 3 yellow beads on. Black and yellow. Dave used black and green yesterday, so I don't see why this shouldn't work. Again, when you're putting these little fly heads on, remember to put the big holes together as this, so the bottom one goes through the large hole first. And it stops them riding up over the top of any beads or knots that you might have. It won't matter today because we're going to, as with yesterday, add a soft rubber fluorescent bead on. As I say, if I've got my light here, you'll see that it's actually a fluorescent bead. Glows in the dark once it's charged, which helps me spot my snoods at night. So we're then going to take the same hook we used yesterday, an MR67 from Colmick, and we're going to put the line up through the bottom of the eye of the hook. Okay, and then what we're going to do, as we said yesterday, is we're going to lay the line along the back of the hook, so it's up through the eye and laid along the back of the hook. We're then going to grip that with our fingers. We're going to take the tag end, come back down, probably a bit more than that actually, back down, and we're going to go round about 10 times. Don't ask me why, I like 10. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, we then grab the tag end, put it back between our fingers and hold it, grip it. We're then going to wet the knot. Okay, we're going to grab hold of it, and now you'll see we've got the tag end, the little loop at the back. So we're going to take the tag end and we're going to put it through the loop. Okay, and then we're going to pull that tight. Okay, and then we're going to draw the knot up against the back of the eye of the hook. Now what I'm going to do is I'll snick off the little tag end here, and then I'll explain why I think that's better than tying a normal half blood knot above the eye of the hook. Okay, so that's that snicked off. Right. Okay, so why do I prefer tying the knot that way with the line coming from below out of the bottom of the eye of the hook? Well, basically it's because of that. If you have a look at the way that hook's hanging, you'll see that it hangs off at an angle, which means that if a fish tried to reject it, it's much more likely to be hooked up. It's a bit like when you tie a knotless knot for hair rigging. If any fish picked the bait up and tried to reject it, a bass or something like that, it will suck it in, and when it tries to blow it out, it automatically gets hooked. Okay, that's the reason I prefer it. The other advantage is, of course, that when the beads, I mean, it doesn't matter in this case because I've got a rubber bead, but if you just had metal beads above it, when the beads come down, they actually fall against the metal part of the hook and don't damage the line. Whereas if you had a normal half blood knot across it, of course the beads would fall down on top of the knot, and if there's pressure downwards on them, they can create damage to the top of the knot and lead to breaks. Okay, so that's the reason I like it. Obviously the stop, if you're fishing small baits, you can push the stop right down towards the bottom, and the small bait that's mounted on the hook won't blow up because it's pushes against the beads and stays there. Okay, if you wanted to thread a bigger worm up the line, you just move the stop away, and you could thread it all the way up, and then the beads sit at the top of the worm, again stopping it blowing up, and stopping the bait blowing up further up the line. So that's the reason for the stop on there. Okay, right, so let's just have a quick look at how I store my hook lengths if I'm not keeping them on the rig bodies themselves. So what I use is one of these hook wallets. Basically you can buy these anywhere, lots of companies do them, and you can see in here that at the top I have a 40cm hook length. I've only got one in there at the moment, and then at the bottom I've got quite a lot of 30cm ones. So they're actually, the hooks are into the EVA boards that are stuck to the thing, and they're all marked with the length. So it's 50cm, 45, 40, 35 and 30. Okay, and at the top along here there are little pins where the loops go onto. So how do I actually tie them so they're exactly right, exactly the right length? Well, it's quite simple really. This is why I leave it on the leave the line attached when I'm tying the hooks onto the spool of line. So what we're going to do is, we want a 40cm one, so I'm going to pop the hook into the EVA board at the bottom. I'm going to stretch it up, okay, and I'm going to take it round the pin at the top. All right, so I've now got the hook in the board, it up to the top and round the pin. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that line with both fingers, okay, like that. And then once I've grabbed it and pinch it really tight, okay, so it's come round the pin, back down, I'm gripping both pieces of line, holding it tight, and I'm going to tease the hook out of this end of the board, okay, hopefully without moving the thing. Right, that hook's point was stuck in there quite stiff. Okay, so that's it. So when I lift it away, you'll see now if I change the grip, I have a loop at the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to tie a simple overhand loop knot, okay, and I'm going to pull it through, but I want to make sure that the loop that I leave is big enough so that the beads and the sequin can drop through. So don't tie the loop too small trying to be neat, because you'll find that then you can't get the sequin through the loop. Okay, don't want them too big, but just remember you've got to get the sequin through it. Okay, so to pull that tight, you can just stick anything through it. I'll use this weight to go through it to pull tight. Okay, now having tied that loop on the end of there, we now, if you remember, we said we were going to twizzle the line so that we get that stiffer boom to kick it away from the swivel and avoid tangles, because we're using such light line. So what we're going to do, just like yesterday, I'll wet my fingers and we're going to turn this one this way and that one that way. Okay, so we're just going to spin the line, okay, all the way down, okay, like that, until we've got about 4 or 5 inches of twizzled line. Okay, so there you go, 4 or 5 inches of twizzled line. Let's tighten that up a little bit. There's a little loose bit of twizzle there. Okay, and all we're going to do again is I'm going to take this twizzled line, I'm going to form an overhand loop again, and then simply put the loop at the end up through it, and tie it tight like that, and then using my Snickers I'm going to snip off the line to the spool. We'll just get rid of that out of the way. It will twizzle up on the spool, but it just drops back out again as soon as you've done it. So what we'll do is we'll put that spool line away. Again, we're using the colmic former. So now what we've got is we've got the hook, the beads, the sequin, the stop, single line going up to a short length of double twizzled line and a loop at the top. And to store that, because we marked that at the top, when we go back into the hook wallet and we put the hook into the board at the top, and then we stretch it up and we simply pop it over the top of the pin at the top. That one's at a funny angle. Over the top of the pin at the top, and you'll see we've now got 2 hook lengths stored away on the board, the same length, and ready to put straight onto my snoods when I next go fishing. The good thing about this and having a hook board like this is you can tie lots and lots of hook lengths up, providing you tie your rig bodies all the same. You can tie lots and lots of snoods up, and they're all ready to use as soon as you want to go fishing. If you don't have one of these, or you don't want to go to the expense of buying a proper hook board, you can simply use an EVA spool. And as we did before, you put the hook into the EVA, roll it around, and then take one of your pins, put it through the loop and push it into there. And then if you want to do multiple hooks, you then put the next hook through that loop, take the pin out, roll it round and put the pin back in, and you can store 30 or 40 on one single EVA board. The only thing you will need to do if you're going to do that, of course, is have something, maybe a nail in a board, so you can measure the length and get the length right, so they're all the same size, so that when you attach them onto your rig bodies, they are the right length that you require. So that's hook lengths. Finally, we said we'd touch quickly on leads and the types of leads we have that we use for flatfish fishing on the shore. Now, there's lots and lots of different types of lead for sea fishing. Yesterday, because there was very little flow, very little tow from the sea, it was flat calm basically. There was no tide, no wave, no longshore drift. We got away with using very light 45 grams, and could have probably got away with even lighter weights than that. Rolling leads. Basically, they were just edging through really slowly, and that's what you want to try and achieve when you're actually fishing for flatfish. What you want is you want the lead to grip, give it a couple of minutes for the fish to see it, and then it to move a few inches, perhaps move a few inches, or just drag through slowly. Now, flounders are very aggressive, and they'll grab a bait really quickly and hit it quite hard. When you're fishing for other flatfish species like dabs, you sometimes need to nail the bait to the bottom a little bit more. So if there's a bit more tow than there was yesterday, then you might need to use something that's got a bit more grip. And you could use little watch leads like these, which have these little nipples on them that stick into the sand and just take a little bit, they're a little bit more difficult to dislodge, and that will slow down the speed that you go through. You could use a pyramid lead. Again, what happens is your snood and everything would come off the back with the flow, and the flow comes up over the top of it, and the sides, the end of it, digs into the sand. And again, as soon as you so that will actually slow down the speed that your bait will move through. Or you could use for something a bit more modern like this. It sits down like that, digs into the sand, but as soon as you lift your rod, it comes up and it lifts the fins out of the sand, and you're left with a normal lead to retrieve. So all of these are quite good. When it's really pushing through very hard, the only option if you want to hold it still is to use a breakaway. But as we're talking about fishing with coarse fishing tackle, it's extremely unlikely that your tackle is going to be strong enough to dislodge the prongs in a breakaway lead because the line diameter you're going to be using, probably using, and the strength of the rod you're probably going to be using isn't going to be strong enough. When you're sat here in the garage and you're just pulling these out like that, they come out very easily. But trust me, when it's embedded in the sand and you're trying to dislodge it, it takes quite a bit of pressure to release it. But that said, don't forget, when you're fishing with coarse fishing gear, your main line is going to be a lot finer diameter than you would be with sea fishing, and therefore there's less drag on that line, and you're therefore going to be able to get away with much lighter weights than you would be if you were fishing a heavier line, a stiffer rod, with conventional sea fishing tackle. So that's basically quickly touching on leads. I hope you found that informative, and I look forward to seeing you out on the shore sometime.